Good afternoon, everyone. It gives me great pleasure to call this committee meeting to order. And I'm going to call on Ms. Sawyer to do a roll call for the board members. Thank you.
Sharon Warden.
Present.
Pam Pereza.
Here.
Rodney Walton.
Here.
Daniel Spence.
Here.
Dr. Sheila Williams.
Here.
George Archuleta.
Here.
And Miss Virginia Houston.
Present.
We have everyone, Chair Warden.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Houston, may you read the ethics awareness statement, please?
Okay. Welcome to this meeting of the Elizabeth City Pasquotank County Board of Education. It is my duty to remind members of this board that it is your responsibility to avoid all conflicts of interest and potential conflicts of interest in accordance with Chapter 138A of North Carolina General Statutes. As public servants, it is our duty to continually monitor, evaluate, and manage our personal, financial, and professional affairs in such a way as to ensure the absence of conflicts or potential conflicts. Does any member know of any conflict of interest or potential conflict of interest with respect to any matter coming before the board this evening? Let the record show that no conflicts exist.
Thank you, Ms. Houston. May I have a motion from the floor for the approval of the agenda?
Motion to approve.
And a second?
Second.
Okay. It has been approved and seconded for today's approval of the agenda. And we're going to move on with the financial committee. We'll begin, as always, with the maintenance report, and Ms. Wilkins is available. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Wilkins at this time about anything on this report?
Chair Warden, do we need to vote on the approval of the agenda?
Oh, I am sorry. Yes, we do.
And who
With
did
the
the
roll
second?
call,
Who was the second for that motion?
I did.
Ms. Houston.
Thank you. Roll call, Pam Pereza.
Yes.
Rodney Walton.
Yes.
Daniel Spence.
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams.
Yes.
George Archuleta.
Yes.
Virginia Houston.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, again, with the maintenance report, does anyone have any questions for Ms. Wilkins about any of those items? Okay, Ms. Pereza.
I just wanted to see, I saw in other that you met or someone met with a Parks and Rec director. And there's a future meeting planned with the athletic directors. Could you give us an update on that situation?
There hasn't been a meeting set. It's a tentative. I met with the Parks and Rec director to discuss the Northeastern Sheep Harney, River Road, and I think there were only 3 complexes where we share some fields. And because that director is new as well, we were trying to get in place practices and procedures as to who would be in charge of what. Once we set a schedule, I wanted to meet with the principals and the ADs and the powers to be so that we can all be on the same accord and everything would be, consistent from here on out. So if there were any other changes, it would be already in play.
Okay, so the Parks and Rec, obviously I know that we share the park at River Road and the soccer complex and then the tennis courts and at Northeastern, I believe.
Yes, there's a soccer field at Northeastern, and then there's also a Pee Wee football league that practices and plays on the backside of Sheep Harney.
Gotcha. So they help maintain some of those grounds as well because of that dual use.
Yes, ma'am.
And the soccer fields at Northeastern, is it both of them?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. There's just one. The one on the left is Parks and Recs, and the one on the right is ours.
Okay. And are we responsible for, fencing? Are we at that agreement level yet of who's, because the fence is falling down out there?
That was the whole meaning of the discussion. We're trying to establish who has responsibilities for what.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I had a question regarding the HVAC tech. You say currently we only have one tech providing service, and you were cross-training an employee. How significant is the labor for just one tech? Or is there,
He maintains the systems for all 12 sites, plus the 4 support places. And he is also doing the servicing for kitchen equipment right now, because there is no kitchen equipment tech.
so we are eventually going to address that issue?
Yes, sir. There's a position that's been posted, but we can't get anybody to commit for employment.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, any other questions? When do you anticipate, Marlene, the paint quote that is pending for the bleachers at Northeastern?
Actually, when I sent that in, that was pending, but it's already been taken care of.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Brown and Son has completed it.
Oh, all right. Thank you.
Yes,
Very
ma'am.
much. All right. Okay, if no more questions for Ms. Wilkins, we'll move on to Ms. Godfrey, offered technology surplus. And Ms. Godfrey.
Good evening. We have submitted a list to submit for approval from the Board of Obsolete or Unrepairable Computer Equipment. The list that we have given to you, what we do is we go through the list and look at items that can be sold. If it is items that we can sell, we go through that process. Any items that are not wanted by other vendors to purchase, we work with the county with their recycling partnership. And they help us with the recycling program. They come on site, they remove the equipment for us in their trailers, and then they take care of disposal for us.
Okay. Any questions concerning this list? Or anything that Ms. Godfrey has presented at this time?
I was just looking at the number of Chromebooks from 2018. They're only 3 years old. And there's like pages and pages or they're only a few years old. What is our expected shelf life? I know it's in a school and we're dealing with kids, but like an expected shelf life of a Chromebook.
Well, it varies now. We had the expectancy of a Chromebook is different now since we are full one-to-one and the devices are going home with students. So we're kind of still learning since this is the first year that they've been home for the full year. We have a large percentage that are still holding up very well. And then looking at the numbers that we have, understanding that some, we do have a good bit that have come back and that are unrepairable. But if you want a percentage, I really have to kind of dig down and get back with you.
No, I was just curious.
Yeah.
It just, things that were acquired like several years ago. I
Right.
wasn't surprised. I was kind of surprised by a number from like 2017, 2018. And they're unusable just based on damage and they're just not repairable.
Right. What actually hits the surplus list are ones that we cannot repair. Before we put them in surplus, we actually rob parts from any device that comes in that we can remove parts from so that we can use them in other devices. That's a large percentage of what we are able to do with the tech team being able to do their own repairs. Once it hits the surplus list is kind of when we can't use it anymore for parts and it's non-repairable.
Gotcha.
I think the question would be, prior to the pandemic, what was the life expectancy of the Chromebooks? Like how, so if you purchased one in 18, did we usually keep it for like 5 years? And now that they're using it much more than, you know, we have less time before it's inoperable? Basically.
Yes, that's definitely a correct assumption.
So it's about 5 years previously.
Yes, and then looking at, so in general, you know, when we first started with Chromebooks, Google actually gave us, you know, they're going to give you updates for 5 years, knowing that that's kind of what the life cycle of a Chromebook device is going to be. They've extended that out to 6 years now. And we will be able to get, you know, 6 years out of some devices, but not as large a percentage as we were since they're now, you know, 24/7 use.
Ms. Godfrey,
Yes, sir.
What's the typical, I guess, time frame with regard to disposal? I see some things are here from 1996 and earlier, but I'm trying to get it, if we have them for that long, are they stored somewhere and then put on a list to be disposed of, or what's the process?
So we typically try to do surplus at least twice a year. And a lot of the items that are on this list that you see that are much older than 5 years plus, kind of resurrected when we had classrooms being dismantled and things that were moved out of the classroom so that we could make sure we could do social distancing. Things kind of reappeared. And so that we could actually make sure that we could get our hands on those and surplus them. Some things that you can see, there are very few things on here that actually were not inventoried, like missing an inventory tag. But a lot of these things that you see that are older than 5 years are things that either A, have still been in use, like the TVs that you can see that are on here, or B, honestly, when we started doing the cleaning out in the rooms to make sure that we could able to manage the social distance in the classroom, equipment resurrected. That's a better word to use.
Okay, so and I guess as a follow-up question, is there a window or an expiration date that we put on these devices to know when they're going to expire, and then they could be prepared for either storage or disposal?
So typically what we try to do is we try to do, when we look at making sure that we're able to keep up with and do maintenance on devices, we usually look at about a 5-year time span. We don't put an actual date on anything just because we're going to use it. If it lasts 10 years, we're going to use it for 10 years. But what we do, we try to plan for it, especially with finance, with laptops, devices like that we're probably looking at a 5-year lifespan, just making sure that we're able to put those things into the budget for planning.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Godfrey? Thank you, Ms. Godfrey.
Yep, you're welcome.
And now we're going to hear from Ms. Haynes. She has several items that she wants to present at this time, starting with budget amendments.
Chair Warden, Vice Chair Perez, board members, good evening. FBT 03 are the amendments Finance has that we're requesting be placed on the consent agenda for the April 26, 2021 regular board meeting. The first amendment, amendment number 107, is for the State Public School Fund, and it's an overall increase of $102,238. The increase is due to the initial allotment for summer reading camp in the amount of $83,583. An increase in transportation in the amount of $12,000 for stop arm cameras. An increase in school technology in the amount of $6,205 for interest earned, and an increase in non-instructional support for $450. The second amendment is amendment number 204 for the local current expense fund, and shows no increase or decrease, but amends the budget to align the budget with actual expenditures. Amendment number 307 is for the federal grants fund and shows an overall increase of $2,621.81. It amends the budget to align the budget with actual expenditures, reflect sales tax refunds in the listed PRCs, and additional allotments in PRC 111 and 165. Amendment number 403 is for the capital outlay fund and shows an overall increase of $172,358 for the allotment for the replacement bus payments. It also shows the transfer of funds from J.C. Sawyer to the Sheep Harney Elementary School rental project. Amendment number 806 is for the local special revenue fund and shows an overall increase of $80,410 for the additional COVID allotment for NC Pre-K in the amount of $60,410, an increase in $10,000 in the Given Tuesday grant, and an increase of $10,000 for the Go grant, PW Moore Outdoor Classroom. Are there any questions on amendments?
I'm Judy. What can you, and I may have missed it before, for amendment number 403? The J.C. Sawyer to Sheep Harney, what is that for again?
So initially in the budget at the beginning of the year for the capital projects, we had budgeted funds for what we were calling the J.C. Sawyer Drive project. That's the cut through road. It's actually Normal Drive is the name of the road. It's the road in between H.L. Trigg and J.C. Sawyer. As we started working on that project, we realized it's a city-owned road. And so we have asked to reallocate those funds. Ms. Wilkins is working with the city on that project. We've asked to reallocate those funds towards the Sheep Harney rental project, which was the repair of the windows on the backside where the lintel failed. So that is complete now, and we have been approved to make that transfer to cover those expenses. Does that answer your question?
Are those the only items that you're asking to be considered for action at the board meeting? Or do you have others?
There's a quote that we have,
Okay,
that we also.
I was going to take a motion, but I'll wait.
Okay. The next item is attachment FBT 04. And this is the quote for Scholastic books. The Scholastic book order is for pre-K through fifth grade students. And ECPPS policy 6430 exempts the purchase of published books from competition. However, Mr. Lane reached out to 3 companies for quotes on 5 books to be mailed home to students in grades pre-K through 5. Scholastic Books was not the lowest quote, but was selected because of services not available through the other companies. Scholastic Books will package the books and provides a family guide to social and emotional learning and a journal for personal reflection. Mr. Lane, I believe, is available online, and Dr. Spencer is available as well to answer any questions you may have about that project. It would be funded from Title I.
And when will they get the books?
It's through the summer, but Mr. Lane, do you know when they'll actually mail the books and the students would receive them?
So it's for the summer.
Yes, ma'am.
Part of it would actually be for the ending of this year. We've chosen books to accelerate reading. So, for example, students who are in first grade would receive a book that's on a second grade reading level, which is where they ideally should be by the end of the year. So there would be probably 2 of the books that would be used for the remainder of the year. And then the rest of the books would be for reading over the summer to help combat that summer slide that happens. So it would be actually for during the year and for the summer.
So I was wrong. It's for both. This is the end of the year and the summer.
Okay.
Right. And we are hopeful. I'm sorry.
Are these for all students, all first grade, all okay.
All pre-K through 5th grade students will receive these books.
Okay.
And are parents being given any guidance in terms of how to use the books? I know we'd have to do it virtually, but I'm just interested
Yes.
in it.
Yes, ma'am. We are talking about doing a Title I night, and it would be a virtual event where we would explain the process and the supplemental materials that go with the books as well as a written communication that will be sent out to families as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And just to piggyback on that, how are the teachers or anywhere, somebody in the system helping with that same program or no? Because I remember at Pasquotank Elementary, he's doing a program by himself. Is this coinciding with that program, or is this completely different from any summer program?
It's a separate initiative that we're doing across the district. Some schools I know in the past, like Central Elementary School, has purchased books to be sent home over the summer. But we decided that it would be a good thing for every student in the district to be afforded that opportunity in pre-K through 5th grade. So they're separate projects.
Okay.
And are these going to be provided for students who are new that register for pre-K and kindergarten as well? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. We are ordering, we've ordered additional books trying to anticipate students that will be coming in. So yes, ma'am, they will get the books as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sounds great.
All right, and now Chair Warden, that concludes my items.
All right, may I have a motion to have these items, these budget amendments and the book purchases on the agenda for action at the board meeting on the 26th, isn't it? 26th.
Chair Warden, do we need to include the surplus list?
Oh, yes, that as well. Can I have a motion from the floor?
I make a motion that we place the technology surplus list, the budget amendments, and the quote for scholastic books on the consent agenda for next week's meeting.
Okay, we have a motion. Need a second?
Second.
All right. Roll call vote, please, Tammy.
Pam Pereza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Daniel Spence,
Yes.
Sheila Williams,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Haynes. And now we'll move on to the current expense proposed budget, and that is being presented by Ms. James Davis and Ms. Haynes.
She is going to pull that up. Presentation. So good afternoon, Chair Warden, Vice Chair Pereza, and board members. Today I'm going to present to you the proposed local budget along with Mrs. Rachel Haynes, our Chief Finance Officer. So the 2020-2021 school year has been like no other and has presented both opportunities and challenges. We have all had to learn how to be innovative, creative, and still accountable to our mission and vision. Our educators and administrators have risen to the challenge. As we close this year and begin next year, I'd like to thank everyone for their hard work and dedication to this district, our students, and their families. Planning is continuous, and as we are addressing the goals and priorities of one year, we're already beginning planning for the next year. Each of our departments is responsible for developing goals and objectives and submitting their budget requests to the superintendent executive team. The team reviews each request and with feedback from various groups, develops the top priorities for the district. This year, the top 3 priorities where we plan to add support are curriculum and instruction through pacing guides, standardized district programs and initiatives, student-centered teaching and learning, and exceptional children. Exceptional children was an area of key focus last year, And we have spent a great deal of improvements and we have seen a great deal of improvements over the past year. Employee recruitment and retention has been ongoing board priority and will continue to be a priority. Transportation was also a top priority last year and continues to be this year as well. Using available funds from all sources, ECPPS will improve employee recruitment and retention. ECPPS has increased the death benefit on the district paid life insurance policy from $1,000 to $5,000. We implemented an employee assistance program, and we will propose some supplemental schedule changes prior to the beginning of next school year as requested by the board. ECPPS has received federal funds as a result of COVID-19. The largest funding is coming from the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, also known as ESSER. We receive ESSER funds in the amount of $1,719,283. These funds will expire on September the 30th of 2022. The applications to apply for ESSER 2 and 3 are now open, and the planning allotments for those are for ESSER 2 in the amount of $6,738,398, with funding expiring on September the 30th of 2023. And then for ESSER 3 in the amount of $15,076,639, with funding expiring on September the 30th of 2024. With ESSER 3 funds, $3,015,328 must be used for learning loss. Okay, this slide shows a snapshot of the total local current expense budget for the past 2 years and the proposed budget for 2021-2022 school year. As you can see, the only real change is in the past years, we have budgeted fund balance, which we have not used. And this year, we're not requesting to budget fund balance at the beginning of the school year. That means that if we see a need for it, then we will go and ask for it at that time.
So the graph on the screen now shows you the percentage of the proposed request by purpose code. You'll see that the percentage breakdown is very close to this year. This is for the 2021-2022 school year, with 39.66% in instructional services and 50.41% in system-wide support services, compared to this year, which is on the next slide, and shows 39.74% in instructional services and 50.97% in system-wide support.
Yes. Here's a list of proposed capital projects for the 2021-2022 school year. We only want to request funding for those projects that can be completed within this fiscal year. Multi-year projects will be requested individually. So do you mind highlighting some of those, Ms. Haynes?
Sure.
Having a hard time.
So just to go through a couple of the requests, one thing that's been on the list for a couple of years that we're placing on the list this year is Central Elementary, the canopy. That's the walk between the cafeteria, the bus exit. It's to help with drop off and pick up. So that's it's a long walk with no covering, and staff has to stand outside with umbrellas and such. So we do want to get that area covered for pickup. We've got floor replacement. That's the VCT tile at HL Trigg, at JC Sawyer. If you've been in the school, you know it's kind of like an open design and an area of that, especially that one side when you first walk in, that whole hall is kind of open design. And there's a lot of areas where there's actually like no cabinets, no storage, nothing for teachers because they kind of had to make shift in some of those areas. So we'd like to build in some money to replace some cabinets, install some new cabinets, and then just a lot of the countertops and things need to be replaced in there. And we want to begin to address the HVAC system in that building. We have 3 schools where we want to pave parking lots. That's North Side, Northeastern, and Sheep Harney. This year we selected Sheep Harney as the school for interior painting. There's a painting schedule that Ms. Wilkins has, and this year we've determined that Sheep Harney has the greatest need. Site work for the drainage at Weeksville, and then design for the cafeteria solarium repair. So the windows that jut out of the cafeteria over there by Sheep Harney need to be replaced. And I think Ms. Wilkins has contractors called several window contractors, but it's going to need to be designed first before we can have that part repaired. On the technology side, we would like to move forward with the security camera projects, adding the middle schools this year for $250,000. And I think that would bring all of the schools up to date on the security cameras. And then we've built in $100,000 for devices. So that would be a total project list of $1,482,677. Those are things that we want to start and begin and finish in this coming fiscal year. So what we'd like to request is to reallocate funds from the Northeastern High School HVAC project and request additional funding to complete the list. So ECPPS is working on long-term capital planning, which will include the Northeastern High School HVAC project, a multi-year project. We anticipate taking this project back to the county later in next fiscal year. So what that would mean is reallocation of funds of $1,341,645, and then an additional request of $141,032 to begin the fiscal year. So in 2020, 2021, we received operating funding in the amount of $11,364,000 and capital funding for the 2020, 2021 project list of $1.7 million. However, at the beginning of the year, we also had project carryover funds for projects we requested funding in previous years in the amount of $2,186,800. Maintenance has been working through the project list and has completed several of the projects. The $2,186,800 does include the Northeastern High School HVAC project. This year, the proposed request would be for the same operating funds, the $11,364,000, and new project funds of $141,032 from the capital fund. We'd like to request to reallocate the $1,341,645 from Northeastern High School HVAC project to the 2021-2022 project list and take the Northeastern High School HVAC project back to the county at a later date for continued funding. Their initial funding only approved one phase of the multi-year project.
So that is the proposed budget. Any questions?
I have one. That HVAC request fund we're doing for J.C. Sawyer, that's not the same company we'll use for Northeastern, right?
Yes, sir. We have to put that out for bid. All design projects have to go out for bid, so that would go out for bid.
Okay.
And we would select a designer based on the most qualified bid.
Not even considering that designer, right?
So,
Oh, no, sure. That's just a headache.
Yeah. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
I got a, when we take our budget to the county commissioners, prior to obviously the pandemic and the CARES funds and the ESSER funds that we've received, what is that process like? Because I'm expecting this year there'll probably be pushback based on the fact that we've received funds and not how those funds will be used, just the fact that school boards have received funds. What is the general, I guess, the general process when we visit the board to talk about our budget?
I'll let Ms. Haynes to make some comments, but I can say that those ESSER funds, counties are not supposed to supplant, meaning they can't not give us monies.
Based on
Based
that.
on,
Mhm.
correct.
I just want to make sure that those bases are covered prior to us actually presenting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes, and I can say we've, Ms. Haynes and I meet with, the, county, manager regularly, at least once a month. And it's been more than that lately, it seems like. And so, I don't know if you have anything else to add?
No, not at this time. But
Mhm.
we're not, I wouldn't anticipate that.
To be in
I mean-
touch with. Okay. Just like prepare for those things just in case.
Well, you can always be prepared.
Absolutely.
Never hurts.
That doesn't hurt me.
Yes.
Are there any other questions about any of those things? Ms. Haynes, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, ma'am, not this time.
Ms. Davis?
Yep, that's all. I think it was a good process, like reviews and I think we got, pretty much everybody's feedback on, especially the priorities. And so,
I guess we just would request to submit this, have this approved at the next meeting to
Okay,
then move forward to the county.
all right. So may I have a motion from the floor to place this on the action agenda for the next board meeting?
I move that we place the proposed local expense budget on the agenda for the next board meeting.
And I need a second
Second.
and a roll call, please. Ms. Sawyer.
Was the second from Mr. Spence?
Mr. Spence seconded, yes.
Thank you. Pam Perezza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Daniel Spence,
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston.
Yes.
The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, that ends the report from the Financial Committee. And now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Williams, who will continue with the Excellent Educators Committee.
Hey, good afternoon. It seems we have one item here, and that is the COVID leave extension. So our interim chief of human resources, this is Karen Dameron. All right, thank you.
Good evening, and because this is information I need you to consider, I'm actually going to give it to you in hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dameron.
And if I could take a minute for personal privilege, I do want to thank the Board of Education for your cards, your flowers, your well wishes at the passing of my brother. I greatly appreciate it, so thank you. Okay, tonight I want to present to you information that we have received from the state that talks about an option that we will have when it comes to COVID leave. So I've given you the information as it was presented in our HR meetings, and tonight it is just for information for you to consider. It will take a board vote if you decide to make any changes in what we're currently doing. So with that said, the American Rescue Act was signed into law back on March the 11th, 2021. Now the employer could voluntarily extend that leave that were created from the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, and it was passed in March 2020. There are two types of leaves that we're going to be referencing here. And one of them would be the emergency paid sick leave. And then the second one was an emergency FMLA, which is referred to as the FFCRA leave. The original FFCR expired on 12/31/20, but it was extended to March 31st, 2021. So we've got leaves that we've had because of the coronavirus. They expired on March the 31st. And now you have the option of whether to extend that leave April 1st till right now, the end date is September, or any semblance of what that can be. We can start it, stop it. Different districts are doing different things, and I'll share with you our surrounding districts on what they're doing. So let's take a look at the two options. The leave options created through the ARPA, an employer may, but not be required, to extend the emergency sick leave or the emergency FMLA, or both of them. So you have a choice. The extension is permitted between April 1st, 2021 through September the 30th, 2021. It is permissible for an employer to narrow the expansion period. So some districts are going from April to June, or you could go from April to September, or you could go from April to August. You've got different timelines in between there that you could pick, but all of the same rules that we had from the original leave have to be followed. So if an employer voluntarily extends the emergency sick leave, it must follow these rules in order to receive the rulings. Now, these were the same things that we had before, and I won't take the time to read these to you, but all of them are referred to as reasons with the COVID. So the employees have to be having some issues with COVID, either diagnosed themselves or been put out of work because of COVID. I think it's just a little bit more stringent than what it was before, when we had everybody go home last March because they were just high risk. Now we need to make sure that there's some connection with the employee and COVID. So those reasons are listed there. The emergency sick leave provides up to 2 weeks of paid leave. An employee's sick leave balance will be equivalent to those 2 weeks, or it's equal to the 80 hours. And that might be what you've been accustomed to hearing, is about the 80 hours of leave before. And it's going to also be available for our part-time or half-time workers that we have. We'll just kind of prorate the leave if you decide that we want to approve any of these. The reasons are all listed. These are the same reasons. And if you look at each one of those little boxes, everything you see is related to COVID. For example, the employee was subject to a federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation order related to COVID-19. So if an employee has been asked to quarantine by the health department, who we've been working close with, a doctor has given them a note, told them they need to be quarantined, or if the state or federal has some type of guidelines that they're quarantined, that will be affected here. Now, if you go down to the third box, this is what's new, in that shaded area that you see. The employee was showing symptoms of COVID-19 and was seeking but had not yet received a medical diagnosis. So they've got symptoms, haven't been diagnosed yet. Now we can use this leave. The employee is seeking or awaiting the results or a diagnostic test or a medical diagnosis of COVID-19. And such employee has been exposed to COVID-19, or the employee's employer has requested such test or diagnosis. Again, it's still all having some direct connection to COVID. So employees will be telling us then, we had a case that broke out in a school, and we decided that the teachers in a whole grade level or department, we wanted to quarantine those teachers because we had a case that was discovered. Then this leave could kind of cover those employees for that. The rest of those boxes you see are the same types of issues that the first leave kind of granted them. So that little shaded area is just one of the first new ones. All right, and then number 5, the employee was caring for their son or daughter because the child's school or child care facility was closed, or the child care provider was no longer available because of COVID-19 related reasons. So we kind of, the first leave we had, if the daycare is closed up, people could use the leave. Not meaning that they had to have the cases of actual COVID. Most of the daycares around us now have reopened. So if there's a child care center that's closed now because of COVID and our employees are affected by that, then this leave would be available for them. And the next part tells about how much they're going to get paid. For reasons 1 through 3, the emergency leave is paid at 100% of the employee's pay. For reasons 4 through 5, the sick leave is paid at 2/3 of the pay. Both are subject to the earning caps. The emergency sick leave is only available when one of the above reasons prevents the employer from being able to work or telework. We have very limited teleworking that's going on now because of your decision to bring all of our students back on the Plan A. So that brought all of our teachers back on March 22nd. So if teachers have chosen not to come back now, then of course they're on their own leave because we've got everybody back. And the reason for that was we needed our staff in place in order to provide the daily instruction to our students. So we don't have many teachers that are out with COVID issues now. To extend on or after April 1st, the sick leave balance for all employees would reset. So Ms. James Davis had already started extending the sick leave prior to this becoming law. And some of them would have already used their 80 hours. Well, now this says that they get the reset. So they get like an extra 80 now. Whether they've used it, because we're going by the reasons that they've gotten this requesting the leave now versus once you use your 80 up and then you don't have any more. So everybody's leave would be reset. If you decide at whatever point that we're going to do something with the emergency sick leave, and if any chance that we have charged anybody with leave that they should not have been charged, of course, then that leave will be reverted back to them. The next section talks about the emergency FMLA leave. And it's going to follow the rules in order to receive the payroll tax credit. Now, I didn't mention a whole lot of this, but Rachel is aware of the tax credits that the school district could receive if we opted to use this leave. So she's kind of monitoring that piece of it. For reasons for which an employee may take emergency FMLA have expanded and for the first 2 weeks are now paid. Normally, they would have to have been working at 10 weeks, but now it starts with the first 2 weeks. So that's the only difference in the FMLA piece. Same reasons that have always applied to FMLA. I won't read through those, that you can see that. That's why I want to give it to you in writing so you have opportunity to study through it. And those reasons still exist today. On the next slide, or the next page, it says FMLA is only available when one of the eligible criteria prevent the employee from being able to work or telework. Same reasons. We don't have a lot of teleworking going on at this point because we have our staffs back in the buildings because we required all of our students, or as many of our students that chose to come back on April the 12th. All emergency FMLA, including the first 2 weeks, are now paid. Originally, the first 2 weeks of FMLA were unpaid, and the final 10 weeks were paid. So you start out with 12 weeks, first 2 weeks are not paid, and then you got the 10 weeks. Well, now you've got 12 weeks, and all of those weeks can now be paid if you choose to extend the FMLA, emergency FMLA. It says originally some employees have used the emergency sick leave on the first 2 weeks and the FMLA period, resulting in 12 total weeks of paid leave. Because of the 2 weeks of FMLA now paid, the employers will be eligible for up to 14 weeks of paid leave, 12 weeks of FMLA and the 2 weeks of the emergency sick leave, if both types of emergency leaves are voluntary extended. So I want to let you know again, it is your choice whether you want to extend this. The relationships between the emergency FMLA and FMLA is complicated, because if you think back to the times that we bring people to you and we tell you that they're going to be out on FMLA, there's a certain set of reasons of why that can be approved. So when you're ready to discuss this again, we'll bring back the original FMLA and those reasons, and then we can let you kind of see what those reasons are. So nothing has changed in the reasons except for the FMLA now covers the first 2 weeks, when originally it didn't cover the first 2, it covered the last 10. Okay. Now, just the last point I want to make to you, because these leaves are optional and they're voluntary, it will require that our local board take a vote and make a decision on that. Now, I do want to share with you, because one of the things the personnel groups were looking at, so that I guess no district wanted to be kind of out there on an island by themselves. So they sent us a survey and they asked us to decide what we were going to do. So the survey was due on the 16th. So our response was at that time undecided, because we had not had this board meeting to bring this information to you. So I've kind of highlighted the districts around us to let you know what those districts are doing. Berkeley County has opted not to do either one of the leaves. Dare County is not doing either one of the leaves. And many of the reasons that they offer is because they've got children coming back on the Plan A, so therefore they need their staffs in place, and they just did not have the substitute pools to be able to cover people being absent or to find people to take their places. Hyde County is opted not to do either one. Paquimins County has said yes to the emergency sick leave, and they're extending it to, I think March 31st, 2021. And now they're looking at if they want to extend it beyond that. So when they asked for the survey, it was early enough that they could respond yes to that date coming up. So I'm in communication with Michelle Maddox now to see if they're going to go back and do it any further than that March 31st. But as of today, then they haven't extended it any beyond that point. For Paquimins. Gates County has said yes to the emergency sick leave, and they've extended it to September the 21st. And they've said yes to the emergency FMLA, and that also has a date of September the 21st. Camden says unsure at this point, so I guess their board is also having the discussions like you all are being given the information and undecided. So they've got unsure for either one, and they did not have a recommendation that they will be making. Currituck said yes to the extended sick leave, and they too did it through the March 31st, but will be considering whether they want to add on anything from the April to September date. And then they said yes also to the FMLA leave, and they're making a decision as to whether to extend it beyond that too. Several districts have listed December as an expiration date, and those some of the other districts across the state, because this came out statewide. And then some of them have even listed June as an expiration date. So you could have they could approve anything from April 1st to June to December, in that range. So, well, the December dates that they've got, hold on, let me make sure.
Yeah, that was when, if you can remember.
That was early.
That was
right.
early, and that's when I came back to the board
right
in January to see if you
yes, because this survey, yes, December of last year, that's right. This survey has been kind of floating out there for a minute, and so because districts were undecided, that's why you're still seeing some March 31st dates, some December dates, and then we just keep adding to once districts. Like for us, we got to undecided. So if you all decide something, then I'll go back and update our data so it'll be current with the numbers that we've got. We have an HR meeting next Friday. So if this is going to change any with some of the districts, particularly that's in our region, then I'll be able to bring you what their changes might be, particularly if they said March 31st. So with that said, I'm not asking for a decision or a recommendation or a vote from you tonight. I am asking that you take the information and then we can have a discussion if you like, but then at some point, probably by Monday, we need to be coming back and deciding so that if there are some changes that we need to make with our employees here in the district, we'll have time to be able to either notify them of this leave and see how many employees that we actually have that impacted.
I have a question.
Yes.
And you may have touched on this and I did not hear it, but I wanted to clarify. So the emergency sick leave is 80 hours,
Yes.
or the proposed is 80 hours.
Yes. 2 weeks. Yes, ma'am.
That's it.
That's
It's
it.
not for every episode that could happen. Like, for example, I could be showing symptoms and waiting for test results and I
Mhm.
get
And you use some of that 80
use some
hours,
of that,
you get
but
80
then my
hours
kid's
total.
daycare closes. That's still coming out of the original 80
Yes,
hours. You
ma'am.
don't get more time for
No, ma'am.
different episodes, or if I get COVID again,
No,
I have
ma'am.
80
I
hours to
think
use and
that's,
that's
we
it.
understood to be one reset of the 80 hours because they've had that 80 hours earlier with the original COVID leave. So we kind of reset and extend that 80 hours to anybody that is impacted with that.
Okay. It's on. I don't know. The only thing I was gonna say is they got 80 hours from when the leave first came out. And then it was supposed to end in December.
Mhm.
But then when I came to the board in January to ask, if you would consider the extension, the employees could use it up to the amount of time that they hadn't exhausted their 80 hours. So it wasn't reset in January. This one will require it to be reset if I'm.
That's correct.
Okay,
So
thank you.
if I used up some or all of my 80 prior to that date, the January, I get now a fresh new 80 hours.
Mhm.
There's no
And it's not
160.
by incident, it's just you get 80 hours.
There's no 160 for anybody who hasn't used 80 before.
No, no.
Just 80 hours.
It's just 80 hours. Right.
For either sick leave or FMLA.
Now,
Either.
that's sick leave. It's 80 hours of the emergency sick leave. The
Okay.
FMLA is 12 weeks. The difference is the first 2 weeks of FMLA have normally not been paid, but now you can get paid for those 2 weeks, and then the 10 weeks has always been paid.
Okay.
So that's the change in the FMLA piece.
And again, this is at the cost is at the cost of the district.
Yeah, I think some Corona, they're recommending that some, I think it's some Corona dollars that have come to the district could be used for some of that. Yeah,
Some, but
so it's not all. Because I think some of those dollars that came had like a broad spending kind of outline on them. And so, yes, it could be used for that, but we don't have like a pot of money that came that you just take care of the leave from.
Mhm.
So we'll be using funds under the CARES Act, but same funds.
Okay.
Can you expound on that tax credit that you were talking about we could possibly get?
Yeah,
Because that could help out some of that.
I can. Rachel might want to help me out on this one.
She's on.
It seems that so there is a payroll tax credit or new benefits. And the explanation that we were given for this was under the original FFCRA, government employees were excluded from receiving the payroll tax credit. But there was a special rule that relieved government employers from providing the match through 12/31/20. There was no tax benefit for government employees that voluntarily extended the leave between January 2021 and March 30/31. So now, public school systems, there is a tax credit. Now, to the amount of that, Rachel will have to chime in on that, or what it looks like in terms of dollars and cents. To seek the tax credit, they've got some guidelines. IRS is expected to issue updated guidance. It talks about it. A district may wish to consider deferring a decision on whether to extend these leave options until such guidelines have been issued. So it's not very clear on what kind of tax credit it's going to be for us. And then the last note on the tax credit section was, consider that future state guidelines may impact the use of credits. For state-funded positions, It is unclear whether DPI will issue guidance about how payroll credits may be used. Similarly, it is unclear whether or how a county would consider the impact of payroll tax credits received when making future appropriations. So it sounded like to us, when you say tax credit, it was not just an automatic benefit. It could, but those rules haven't just been resolved yet. But the incentive is out there, and maybe it was more of an incentive for some of the larger districts rather than the smaller districts. But Rachel is gonna be researching that to see to what benefit it would be to us, depending on the decisions that you all make.
I think that'll be good to help us with understanding covering the cost.
Okay?
You said the other one, we got funds to help cover part of the cost.
Yes.
If this tax credit can help us cover another part of the cost, then we can really see what the real number is that it's going to impact the district.
Okay.
So if we could have, I think for me, that will help me make a decision on this by Monday.
Okay. We talked about it in executive table, so she's already been kind of doing some research to find out what the benefit might be.
Okay, any other questions for Ms. Dameron? Great discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dameron. Dr. Williams, can you take us into, if there's nothing else, can you take us into closed session?
Absolutely. The board will go into closed session for the purpose of considering personnel actions that involve employees of this board as allowed by NC Statute 143-318-11A6.